Depending on how long it runs. Yeah.
Okay, welcome everyone. It is 6 p.m. on the night of Wednesday, February 11th, and so we will call our meeting to order, and we'll begin with roll call starting at my left.
John Lyons, no conflicts.
Matt Wheelwright, no conflicts.
Ann Allen, no conflicts.
Lisa Jensen, no conflicts.
Melissa Kendall, no conflicts.
Barbie DeSoto, no conflicts.
Joel Temple, no conflicts.
And Jonathan Hill and I have no conflicts. We'll now have a Pledge of Allegiance led by Matthew Wheelwright.
Rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. As we begin our meeting, I would like to read a statement on the proper decorum for this meeting. Although this is a public hearing, only the presenters and those invited by the commission may speak or ask questions, unless otherwise invited by the chair. Please wait to speak until called on. When speaking, be sure to speak into the microphone so the record is clear. Please state your name and city of residence for the record. Please limit side conversations as they interfere with the audio recording. If you need to have a side conversation, please step out of the chambers. Please do not attempt to interrupt or speak over others. Intimidating or threatening speech or behavior will not be tolerated at any time. Please refrain from clapping, cheering, booing, or being otherwise disruptive during the hearing. Okay, with that, we'll get into our items for tonight, and I'm going to go ahead and read both of those in at the same time. Item 1, Stephen Styler requests a zone map amendment to add the data center overlay zone to property in the PIC zone to develop a data center located at 1507 South, 180 East in the East Bay neighborhood. And item 2, Reid Wintersteen requests project plan approval for a new 66,000 square foot data center in the PIC zone located at 1507 South, 180 East, East Bay neighborhood. And who's going to be presenting that? Is that you, Dustin? Dustin Wright will be presenting that for us.
All right, thank you very much. So here's the property that we're looking at tonight for both items 1 and 2. This is on the old Novell campus where Rocky Mountain University is now, next to the wastewater treatment plant. The property is currently zoned planned industrial commercial, or the PIC zone. The applicant is looking to add the data center overlay zone. This overlay zone was created to make it so that data centers can only go in 2 zones, the PIC and the light manufacturing zone. It also gives the city council the ability to see each of these as they come through and have discretion as their rezone applications. So this one that we have tonight's the first one that we're seeing with this new overlay zone that was created. Our general plan map here shows commercial as the designation. The planned industrial commercial zone and the proposed overlay zone are compatible with this designation. Here's the close-up of the site. Consists of 2 parcels totaling 7.29 acres. The existing building would be removed to make way for the new proposed data center. Here's a rendering showing what that building would look like. So it's a 132,000 square foot building, or 66,000 square feet per floor. Here are the elevations of the proposed project. The building height meets the zoning requirements at 55 feet. And then here is the site plan. showing the data center there in the center. And you can see there's another building that was going to house the on-site power generators. The developers moved away from that plan to do on-site power generation and plans to use power from the Provo City grid. So they would be starting out with approximately 5 megawatts of power, and as Provo Power has the ability to provide more, they could utilize that. So that second building with those generators, that building's going to get reduced to just house emergency backup generators that would be natural gas, not diesel. They propose to use a closed loop water system for cooling the data center. So that helps reduce water usage, brings that more into line with what we'd see in a typical office building of this square footage. And then as you can see, there's parking. The parking that our code would require because of the square footage of the building would be close to 300 parking spaces, which is well beyond what they would need for this facility. So they've done a transportation demand management program that incorporates different things to help reduce the need for parking. But they're still looking to provide 72 parking stalls. They'd be asking the planning commission for that reduction from what our code would typically require on a building of this size. And so that's kind of an overview of both of these items. We have a representative from Provo Power here to address any questions that will come up as far as what power needs and everything will be, as that's been something that you've gotten letters and things like that about. And then as far as recommendations go for the rezone, if you're looking to recommend approval to the municipal council, that they've also proffered a development agreement to ensure that those items as far as not generating power on site and utilizing a closed loop water system, that those will be included in a development agreement as they're not required in our code. And then if you're looking to approve the project plan, the staff report, we've noted a few conditions of approval that would go along with that. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you. Commission, let's ask Dustin any questions we have for him, and then we'll call up the Provo Power representative to ask him any questions we have. Lisa?
Okay, I also have power questions, but I'll ask the ones that I think will be better for you. Do you know if using recycled water from the nearby treatment plant is actually an option that's even on the table? It said in the staff report that they were discussing it with the Public Works Department.
Yeah, they've discussed that. I think that came up through the neighborhood meeting. That could be a question to bring up to the applicant next to see if
Okay.
they've made any.
I didn't know if it was even realistic, like if it,
Yeah, I think that was something that was
okay.
brought up, but I don't know that there's how much traction there is with that idea.
Okay, how do you guarantee or limit the water usage if it's actually higher than what the applicant said it would be? Like, how does that get regulated and guaranteed?
So as part of that development agreement, I think those numbers are in there, so that could be the mechanism to make sure that they're
Okay,
following along with that.
okay. And about the parking, it says the planning commission can approve the parking reduction. So my question is, if the use changes in the future, say the data center is no longer, and we've approved a giant footprint that doesn't have room for more parking, that's not going to make the property compatible with a different use. So how much do we need to consider that when we review a TDM request?
So that TDM would run with the land. So if a new property owner came in there, they'd either have to come up with a new plan and ask the planning commission for changes to that or continue to meet that. As you can see on the site, there is additional space for more parking. So that's a place where future parking could go if needed. but we didn't feel like it made sense to require that it gets put in at this point if it's not needed.
Okay. And then my last question that's not power related is in the section on monitoring and evaluation, it says regular monitoring and evaluation are crucial to assess the program's effectiveness and make necessary adjustments. Who does this? Is that the city? Is that the Power Regulation Committee? Like, who makes sure that they're following this? Is, I think, in their TDM documentation on page 15 of the staff report for item 2. It's number 5.
Number 5 in the TDM.
Yep, page 15 of the item 2 staff report, if you have that in front of you. Which is page 3 of their
Yeah, so that would be,
TDM.
that's something that they're proffering to do. So that would be the property owner would be the ones making sure that they're meeting that. So
Okay.
that would be.
That makes
question
me
for
nervous
them.
a little bit because they're regulating themselves, so it's in their interest to not follow up and monitor. So, okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Matthew?
Thank you. So just a couple of items that I think are for you. One is we're asked, I think, item 2 is specifically a project plan approval, but without this building that wraps around the side here, I understand that's gone away, right? So what's in its place? It feels a little weird that we're asked to approve a project plan or recommend approval for a project plan if we can't actually see the right project plan.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So, yeah, this set of plans that we have came earlier on before that rezone or that text amendment for the data center overlay took place. Once that came online, that required that they submit for this rezone, the item or the zone map amendment for item 1. And so during that process, we kind of focused there. So as a condition of approval for the project plan, in the condition number 1, it talks about that they provide updated plans, that those get approved by CRC. If the planning commission would like to see those before approving, that's that makes a lot of sense. We could have it could be continued until those plans are available to bring back.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a sense of how many data centers we now have in Provo? I didn't see that
That's a good
anywhere
question.
in the
I'm not sure.
documentation,
Yeah,
right? Because
I'm
this
not
is a
aware.
zone that others could apply for. I'm curious if, I seem to recall one we talked about a few months ago. Over by the
There's
airport.
been some that wanted to go in out by the airport. Those didn't get approved. So this is the first one that's coming in under this new overlay zone.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Joel?
Can I ask how this aligns with the goals in the general plan, how it's helping to advance those? I saw some notes in the staff report, but could you provide a little bit of detail on that?
Sure.
Dustin, while you find that note, we were chatting. There are at least definitely 2 very small data centers here in Provo, possibly a third or other very small ones, but they're the sort where it would be a server rack room like BYU's small data center. No large ones yet.
Sorry, can I ask a follow-up on that? So give us a context. So is this one huge? Like I don't know enough about data centers to.
The one that BYU put in the old chapel building is about 12 megawatts, as far as I understand. This project is coming in at 5 with the potential to scale up with power from Provo Power. So much smaller than the one currently on BYU campus.
This is a small one also.
This would be considered a very small data center.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Which one at BYU are you referring to? Because they have the kind of web server room, and then they also have the research computing facility.
This is where we were getting into the 2, maybe 3, because what qualifies as a data center gets a little blurry when it's that
Right.
small. The one I was referring to, the larger, I believe 12 megawatt, is the one that was put in the old chapel building that was repurposed to house the data centers.
Do you have it?
All right. Yeah, and to kind of answer your question, I think what they're proposing on the site is to utilize, landscaping, different things that would align with our conservation resiliency plan. That's part of our general plan. Also kind of, I think the steps that they've gone from generating power on site from that plan to using it from the grid. That's a much cleaner, environmentally friendly way, especially within an urban core, to be able to mitigate impacts that would come from generating power on site. So
I just have one quick clarification question. You said it's 60,000 square feet per floor and 2 floors? Because the request only has 60,000 square feet total. So is only 1 floor of the data center, or how's that going to look?
yeah, so it would be the 132, the combined, that was,
So does that mean item 2 is mistyped then?
yeah, the language there, I think it just says 66,000. I think that's just more of the footprint.
Right.
layout. If you add in both levels, that gets you up to that square footage.
Okay. John?
Yeah, just a couple more on the water. Just is there any concern from the city about the water demand for this data center?
There hasn't been. It's gone through our staff coordinator review committee with them proposing this closed loop system. That greatly reduces it from what we typically would think when it comes to data centers, and those evaporative cooling systems that utilize quite a bit more water. So what they're proposing to utilize as far as water goes, is comparable to like a car wash or something like that.
Saw that. So that's what, about 30, 50 homes, something like that, equivalent? Guess it depends.
It could be. I'm not.
How big, some playing around with numbers. I got somewhere around there. Even up to 100 homes if you don't count the outside landscaping, right? In the event that there's a drought and we have drought allocation for water, we've all lived through this winter. We see what's going on. This may not, this will be here for a long time. And so if there is a drought allocation, is there any concern with that?
I guess that would be a question, for the developer, how they would handle that situation. Like I said, I think, it's not creating that water demand that,
It's not as bad as it could, but for what it is, you don't have any concern about that right now.
yeah, I think it seems comparable to other uses that we have throughout the city.
Okay. Did they ask for any tax incentives or anything like that for the data center?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for Dustin? Okay, thank you, Dustin. Can we have the power representative come up, please? Welcome.
Thank you.
Can you state your name for the record?
Tad Smallcomb.
Okay, great, thank you. And what questions do we have for Provo Power? Lisa?
Okay, let's see which one's best to do first. Let me get the little ones out. One of their questions that a neighbor asked them that they were possibly looking into was solar panels and batteries to help them with their power intake. And I remember in the ordinance that we recently passed that defines the rules for data centers as a use, there were different, is it UMPA? Is that the acronym?
Yes.
Different standards that UMPA had for where the power could come from and who could generate it. And I'm wondering if them having solar panels on their building works with the UMPA standards that are for data centers, or if there's a problem with that.
Yes, there's no restriction. Well, I mean, there are restrictions, but there are allowed to use solar or batteries, or at least to propose. We'd have to go through a discussion, but it's not forbidden.
60,000 square feet of solar panels could generate how much power?
I don't.
You don't know? Okay. The other question I had about the power is, I know Provo has a tiered rate structure for power consumption. Like, for example, if you run your appliances in the middle of the day, it's going to cost you more than if you do it off peak. So with somebody demanding so much from the grid consistently, how would this affect them versus how would it affect the other customers?
Yes, they are required to enter into a power purchase agreement. So it's not going to be done on the Provo City rate schedule. They'll have to determine what, between, the city, determine what that rate would be for them to buy the 50 megawatts or 5 megawatts or whatever that number is. So it does not fall under the rates of Provo City.
So it's almost like, but does the increased demand on the system mean that Provo residents are going to be paying higher for their power as well?
No, you shouldn't see any impact on the Provo residents. UMPA will have to go and acquire all of the power that this facility wants. And then based on what they pay, they're going to negotiate a rate with the data center. So it won't have any impact on the Provo City rates.
Okay. Does their power use and the infrastructure required for it benefit or potentially negatively impact the citizens or the infrastructure?
Yeah, so right now we're having a consultant do a system impact study to determine how we're going to get to this facility, get the power from Rocky Mountain Power to this facility. At this point, it hasn't been completed, but we anticipate building all new facilities from Rocky Mountain's point of service to this facility. So it'll have no impact on our existing infrastructure.
And who pays for that infrastructure improvement?
They pay for everything. That right now, the study that's being done, they've already paid for that. They've already paid for a Rocky Mountain Power study. They've already paid for a UMPA study.
And that's just part of your power,
Part of
the power department review of this project.
Absolutely. And we won't do anything until we are paid.
Okay, those are my questions.
Great, John.
Yeah, so is there any potential for I think what you're saying is that the costs of power will go directly, so whatever cost of power has to Provo is what the center will pay. There's any potential for benefit for Provo by the increased demand?
Certainly, yes, depending on what it is, but right, we will make money because we're selling power. And then also there's a transfer to the general fund. So those things will be in play. And this is, they say 5 to 50 megawatts. That's a significant amount. And this isn't your house. It doesn't come on for the air conditioning. It's on full blast all the time, every day, all day. It would be a significant financial impact to the power department revenues and therefore the general fund.
A positive impact, you're saying?
Positive impact, yeah.
You don't have any way to quantify that at the 30 megawatt level they're talking
As long
about?
as you don't hold me to this, I'd say more than, and this is the impact to the general fund impact annually of more than $2 million.
Just a wild number.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I mean,
Something like that.
I don't know. I
Okay.
can only do some math with my, with the demand, but we don't know what all the particulars are at this point.
So for that level, this is a
And
city.
that's at 50, or you drop it down, it's not going to be that much.
I understand, but so Provo's current generation's around 13, is that right?
Our current generation, I'm not sure what you mean by that. We have internal generation. At our facility, the UMPA owns a power plant and it's 12 and a half. Yes,
12 and a half, okay.
megawatts.
So that's what Provo currently produces, and we're talking about 30 up to 50. So it's a big deal.
Well, we won't be producing.
I understand,
Okay.
you'll be purchasing it, right?
Yeah, it's all
Okay.
going to be purchased by UMPA.
So currently, UMD has goals to become more renewable. Will this be play with that and so support those goals? So that means these will be mostly renewable sources they'll be purchasing?
I don't have control of that. The mayor will have input because she's on the board of UMPA. So I would anticipate that they are heavily renewable now,
Getting there, yeah.
getting there, yeah.
Okay, so just want to know if this will change that at all. So you haven't done the study yet on terms of any grid updates. So if, I imagine the grid might need to be updated a little bit for this.
Yes, if you're talking about Provo City's facilities, in my mind, we will build a new 138 kV line from Tanner interchange with Rocky Mountain Power, which is in South Provo. And it will follow a line that goes right down the southern part of this. You can see it on the map, the dashed power easement. It'll be on that power line and it will be just a whole separate circuit.
Would that line have any impact on the other neighbors of this area when that's installed?
No, well, it depends. If you're standing next to a pole and you see two wires instead of one,
Okay,
that would be the.
just gonna pull another wire basically for that.
I mean, it's three-phase, so you'll have three wires but I love power poles, so I can't really comment on that fairly.
Okay, in terms of, let me see. Yeah, you see a little bit more about the flat electrical load. I ran a facility years ago that we melted glass. We had a massive flat electrical load, and it was a big benefit to the city that we were in. In fact, we were able to purchase nighttime summer rates of negative. We got free basic electricity for that time. Do you imagine anything like that happening here with that? And
No, because they're entering into this power purchase agreement, it's going to be fixed,
Okay.
so they're not going to be reflected the changes in benefits, like you say, because they're going to be using all that power when it's extremely inexpensive. But it'll be reflected, all of that will try to be reflected in the power purchase agreement, but that's something between UMPA and the city and them. The three of those will have to negotiate, and I will not be part of the money part of it.
understand.
Just an engineer.
To answer to talk to the solar question, just again, my understanding is that even if the world-class solar covered the entire roof, it would not really affect this at all.
It's not going to touch 50 megawatts, I tell you
No,
that.
no, not
won't
half,
touch
not a
5
fourth, not
megawatts,
10%, probably not even, right?
That's right.
Yeah, okay.
But I mean, we still encourage it. And
Certainly, it's not a bad idea, but it's in terms of the benefit, I don't think it's much there. All right, thank you.
Okay. Melissa?
So most of those questions I had as well, so thanks for asking those. A couple of others, is this what's happening with the BYU, the larger BYU data center, that we buy electricity and sell it to them?
I am unfamiliar with the BYU data center. As far as I know, unless somebody can correct me, BYU is served at substations at 46,000 volts. I don't know what they do on their campus. They may have a 12 megawatt system. I don't know, but it doesn't impact. I mean, they pay rates. BYU pays the upfront rate. I don't know what they're doing with their power. So there may be a data center, but it's not something that we have any control of.
Okay. And then when you talked about the infrastructure that they'll pay for, including building the new line, will there be any substation upgrades?
Yes. I would point out that on this picture, you're somewhere on there, they're going to have a substation. Because I'm bringing 138,000 volts, they're going to have to step it down into something usable.
And does that help the community as well?
It's all of this, everything we've talked about is paid for by them and benefits them, except for the fact that we're selling them a lot of power.
Okay.
But if someday we mentioned, well, I don't know how long data centers are going to be the thing, right? Maybe forever. But if not, yes, that potentially could be used in the future to serve us, because we'll own it at that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Joel?
So I understand they're having to build a lot of these infrastructure improvements. And they're purchasing a lot of that power, but so now there's an increased demand on the power needs of the state. Do those commercial and residential balance sheets ever bleed over? The state says, okay, well, now we need 50 more megawatts, plus all the commercial needs around the state and all the other residential needs. So we need all these infrastructure improvements that now state, city, local taxes are paying for. Is this going to trickle down to residents in any capacity, even if they're building a lot of these infrastructure improvements themselves and funding it? Are there financing mechanisms where this does come back to residents we see increased power rates, we see increase because we're having to build out other infrastructure because now we're having to take such a huge chunk for data centers. We can't support our day-to-day needs.
Yes, so the impacts that may happen statewide, I'm unfamiliar with those. I can't speak to those. I can tell you that in Provo, we do what's called a cost of service study annually or regularly. And we determine, okay, how much does it cost us to provide power for the residents? How much does it cost us to provide it for commercial? To make sure that nobody's subsidizing anybody else. We try to keep everybody separate. These guys will be on a totally separate system, so it won't fall into that. And so I can't speak to anything outside of Provo. I know that in Provo, we're taking care of that. So I don't know if that can help you.
Would Provo businesses be impacted? Would other commercial users see changes to their?
Nobody within the Provo will see an impact because of this. Like I say, if there's a Rocky Mountain impact, well, that study's been paid for, being paid for and done. So they can tell you, okay, we can give you 50 megawatts. But this time, here's these projects will have to be completed. These ones are ones that you'll have to pay for to the data center folks. So, you know what I mean? I think that it would stand to reason without me being part of that organization, that we take those things into account beforehand so that we can handle the load. I mean, Rocky Mountain Power is in the business of making money by selling. So I can only say, I suspect that they're going to make sure they can get the power needs to the people that they can.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, that's just my concern is if we see a bunch of infrastructure improvements and you go further and further up the line and there's more system-wide changes that need to happen, does Rocky Mountain Power pass that buck on to everyone? And I mean, I know they're paying impact fees. I know they're paying for lots of the improvements that they're using for their substation, their transmission lines. But yeah, just trying to get a sense of.
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
Okay, Matthew?
So maybe a follow-up question kind of to that, but more about the availability of the power itself, not the cost of the power. We probably all remember, and they seem to happen every summer, brownouts rolling through California and everybody freaking out about not having power, not having air conditioning. Does this change that? Where does that equation work on our level if we're drawing more power? Is the power going to be there? And if we have a lot of data centers, let's say, because it's clearly in our code right now, at some point, will we interact with that, and would the residents be prioritized below a data center that needs flat service? Does that make sense?
Yeah. There should be no visible impact to us regarding that, simply because, right, that's why we do the studies, right? That's why Rocky Mountain Power goes and says, can we handle another 50 meg on the line from wherever UMP gets it to Provo? And they give us their answer. They know what the costs are. In other words, they're not going to say, oh, well, now you've drastically impacted me. No, you're going to pay so that you don't impact me. So there's no foreseeable impact in those regards.
Any other questions? I just have a couple of follow-ups here, just on the same themes here. I was reading through, just so the public knows, we passed an ordinance a while back stating some of these things, that none of the costs can be passed on to the customers, things like that. And along with it was an entire document from OMPA about it. In there, they mentioned a bond that they would have to create to make sure that these costs are taken care of. Do you know anything about how that would work?
I don't know a lot about it, because I'm not the financial fellow, but they have in their policies that they will have to create financial instruments to make sure and take care of any other obligations that may have come up, including if they default or they can't, they
don't
fail,
finish or something like
they
that.
don't
Yeah.
fail, something happens, they will have to have, and I can look it up here if you wish, advance payment and financial security. Data centers are required to make advance payments for power purchases as stipulated in the power purchase agreement. This includes prepayment for expected energy consumption, as well as any associated transmission and distribution costs. To secure these obligations, the data center must provide a financial security instrument in the form of a deposit, an irrevocable line of credit, or a bond acceptable to UMPA and the member city. That's us. that serves the data center. The amount of the financial security will be determined based on the anticipated energy usage and associated costs. So
yeah,
obviously they've tried to prepare and protect themselves, us, and the other member cities in their joint action agency.
yeah, I just want to make sure that's out there because we talked about if they fail or data centers aren't a thing, does it then get dumped on us? But it looks like no, it has to be set up front as a bond to make sure
Absolutely.
that it's going to get paid. So, and you said the rate schedule is still being worked out. It has not been done yet.
Yeah, so I can find that for you as well. Power purchase agreement. Data centers must negotiate a power purchase agreement with UMPA and the member city, Provo. The PPA, that's a short for power purchase agreement, will specify the terms and conditions of the power supply, including pricing, duration, and any specific requirements related to the data center's energy needs. UMPA will have primary responsibility for negotiation of the PPA and will consult regularly with the member city. So,
And just to be clear, so that will include the costs that it takes, but plus a markup that the city gets to put on top of that, right?
yeah, and it's a negotiated rate, right? I mean, city has to make money
Right,
to
exactly.
pay for costs and so forth. But
Yeah. And just a couple other clarifications. Provo generates 12.3 megawatts, but we use much more than that
Yes.
currently, right? Where
Yes.
are we at total?
The peak usage we've had in our history was in 2024, and we used 194 megawatts
Okay,
as a city.
so it is a significant jump, but
50,
not,
50 is a significant jump. It's
Yeah.
it's a serious impact. And like I said, this is 90% load factor. It's using its power all the time. The rest of us, right,
yeah,
it's
going up
very-
and down, causing
way
havoc
up.
on the system. Okay, excellent. Any other final questions for Provo Power? Okay, thank you so much for
Thank you.
answering those for us. Okay, we'll now invite the applicant to come forward. You will have 15 minutes to make your presentation, and we'll ask you questions at the end.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Stephen Styler. I've got others on our team, principals from, so this applicant is B+F Timpanogos Tech Center. I've got Rain Smith with me. Rain, if you want to wave to everyone, you're here, as well as our engineering consultant, Casey Whitmill from AE Urbia. We're super excited to be here. Thank you for taking the time to let us present this project. First of all, we do need to compliment Provo City and their staff. We have really enjoyed, even though this has taken a little bit of time, I think that Provo City's landed in a good position to start evaluating these projects, working with the building and development team. We've had great conversations. We've tried to work through some of these rough edges to try to present this package to you all tonight for your consideration. And I'd be happy to answer some of the questions that came up along the way. I'm happy to answer them up front, or I can answer them at the end, or any other questions that come up. But one thing that I think is very important, Mr. Wheelwright, that you had mentioned on, I think it was you that mentioned on the site plan. There's two different iterations. You've seen there's obviously two items on the agenda. When this project was originally presented, this would have been in April of last year. And that's part of the makeup that you see on the screen today. As we started working with Provo City on this process, Provo City thought that it was appropriate to take some time, pause what you all considered a draft ordinance that was presented. We worked with Provo City to try to make sure that we understood what was happening, and we tried to offer insights of other data center projects. I can tell you, in comparison to the majority of the data centers that you hear you see on the news and other social media, this is very, very, very small. We hear a lot about hyperscale facilities. This was a question that came up. We were fortunate enough to be able to participate in the city council, or excuse me, the community council back in December. And we answered hopefully a lot of questions that the public had about this type of project. Today, the norm is a hyperscale project, which targets hundreds of megawatts, up to a gigawatt, up to 5 gigawatts, that you've heard being built all across the West. West Texas, as an example, is where most of this is happening, and predominantly because they have lots of natural gas and they can build energy generation for days and they can power these facilities. But there's a real need in the west, further west, to take care of some of the AI computation that's required by businesses. As every one of you probably have either a Gmail account or you have a Facebook account, all of you have access to AI. And AI is what's computing a lot of that data. And this site is a very strategic and an awesome site because of its proximity to potential customers, first and foremost, because within Utah County and Provo City, there's a lot of people that rely upon AI to run their businesses and take care of things. But one of the points that I did want to note on that secondary building to the north, when that was originally proposed to the city, it was contemplated that that would be an on-site generation facility. When the principals of B+F met with Provo City and with Provo Power and UMPA, this site was identified as a great site for a data center because of the power infrastructure that was already on this site in a certain load that would be capable of operating a small scale data center. In addition, it was contemplated at that time that there may be capacity to generate natural gas power on site as well. And so that structure that's there today is in reality is very similar, if not identical, to what we're actually proposing today. But as you can see, those generators inside, they look really big and bulky. Those are because those are a multi-megawatt type generator. That structure is still necessary, will still be located there, but would house a backup generator. Instead of a 2 or 3 megawatt generator, it would be a very small backup only purpose generator. So that structure is still necessary, will still be there. So the site plan you have in front of you is virtually identical to what has been contemplated. And if you have additional questions, I'd be glad to have our engineering team speak to that as well. But I hope that gives a little more context. There's not a real big deviation from this other than the size of the generators inside that ancillary structure. So hopefully that's helpful. As far as water, some of the questions about using the possibility of using water from the waste treatment facility, we've had those discussions and those negotiations. What they've deemed that water that we learn in every project and every community we go to, that there's a specific type of water that's called silver water that is produced by that treatment facility. It's not gray water, it's not black water, and it's not culinary grade water, it's a silver water. From everything that we can see, that would probably meet any specs for any closed loop cooling water systems that would be used in the facility. It would be a great thing, we think, if we could utilize that. It would be, from our understanding, would be beneficial to the wastewater treatment facility, and it would be beneficial to us to actually find some productive use of that water. So that's something that we're actively pursuing, if that's something that we can do. But typically, we hear a lot about data centers in Utah, and the concerns are, well, it demands a lot of energy, it demands a lot of water. The old data centers that we used to build all over the time were super water intensive. We've realized in the West that we actually live in the West and we don't have much water. And so we've been forced to evolve. We and anyone else that wants to build a data center. So when we're talking about the amount of water actually consumed within this facility, I tend to say it would be like a typical office of the same size and quantity, but I could probably make an argument that it would be actually much less. And we've given the proposals in the staff report with the efficiency measures that we're working on the closed loop system. We think we will dramatically beat the estimates that we've even suggested. We don't want to be a large water consumer. If we're a big water consumer, we have problems. And that's not a problem that we want to have, and we don't want to drop that in the laps of Provo City. So that's something that we're very cognizant of. So as we evolved and worked through the staff or worked with staff on the new ordinance, and we identified in the staff, and you've all approved this ordinance, there was the category of 0 to 50 and bigger than 50. We are a 0 to 50, and that's what we've proposed in this current application. We also pivoted in this phase to looking only at grid connected power. That's awesome. We would love to start there. Does that mean that we'll never, ever contemplate the idea of how we might collectively with Provo City, with a blessing someday in the future, to look at on-site generation? No. If there's something that's logical for for UMPA and for Provo Power to say, hey, this is actually a spot where we could use some small scale generation. Awesome. But that would be a collective decision. We're not here asking you to approve that today. But if it makes sense for Provo City, Provo Power, UMPA, we'll have those conversations starting we've had them forever. We'll have them in the future. If all of a sudden we see that there's an opportunity, because there's certain things that we can do that even like UMPA can't. We're a private marketplace participant. We could go buy generators without having to get approval from 10 different public committees to say we want to bolster our power supply and generation. So we're nimble and flexible, and we'd like to work collectively with Provo and finding what is the best way to operate this facility and potentially help UMPA and Provo Power along the way. So what you have before you all is a very flexible plan that would utilize the power that's available, provide that base load customer to Provo Power, which when we talk about rolling brownouts occur because everyone turns on their air conditioner at the same time in that peak. We hear a lot about peak load. We are not peak load. We are constant. Now that constant is higher than a traditional commercial use, but it's really easy in the planning process for most utilities to know, hey, they're always going to be on and they're always going to have 6 megawatts or 10 megawatts or whatever's available in the system. And the way that we're designing the components of that structure is to also be scalable and flexible. So if Provo Power and UMPA say, great news, we were able to secure more power, we have a ceiling. The ceiling today is 50 megawatts, but we get to grow as Provo grows, as more power supply, because across the state, there are more power projects that are contemplated now than any time I've ever seen in my professional career working in this industry. So to the extent that more power becomes available and we can increase that constant flow and sale of power to Provo, we would love to pay them for that power and then increase the footprint inside of that structure. We can add another rack. We can add more servers. We can provide more service to our customers and hopefully provide that same mutual benefit to Provo City. So we really appreciate the time. The staff has done an excellent job describing the project and the proposal. I'm happy to answer any questions or anyone from our team, whether it's now in the hallway after, we're happy to stay. If there's questions that anyone publicly or otherwise would like to ask, we don't really have any secrets. It's been pretty well laid out what the plan is, and we'd love to work with Provo. We think it's a great project.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, Lisa?
Okay, you just said that you could buy generators if you needed to produce more power. Yeah, I don't think that is allowed in the UMPA agreement. Am I correct about that?
Completely right. Absolutely. We can't just go buy a generator and plug it in and power this. The ordinance is very clear. The ordinance that you all passed is very clear. Even if we were hypothetically in the future to say, in working with UMPA and Provo Power, they said, hey, guess what? We could use 20 more megawatts of power and you could put it in that building. We would never power this ourselves and just plug it in. We can't do that. Under UMPA's agreement, even if that hypothetical situation were to occur, UMPA and Provo Power, I believe, would end up being the operators. We might buy the equipment and sign a new power purchase agreement that says we could buy that power, but we wouldn't be the people that are turning it on, turning it off.
Okay, perfect. I have a landscaping question.
Yes.
Looking at the site plan that's on the screen right now, it looks like the part of this that would be most visible to the majority of people going by is that north end. And I don't see any landscaping improvements shown on the site plan that we have that would mask a giant humming building from everyone's view.
So I'll answer quickly and then I'll ask maybe Casey if you want to, or Casey wasn't planning to talk about landscaping tonight, but maybe we can. So understand, first of all, one of the key components of a data center is noise. So the ordinance, I believe we ended at 60 decibels. So from the property boundary, it would be 60 decibels. I am currently talking louder than 60 decibels. It's actually a very low and quiet facility. And we've heard that people are, well, they hum and we hear them all nights. This building will not exceed that 60 decibels, which would be probably quieter than cars. Well, it would be quieter than the cars that are passing by. It'll be a very quiet facility, but landscaping is something that we are clearly have the purview to change. If you think that we need to, that's not a problem. That doesn't cause us any concerns. As you saw the renderings that were there, I actually think it's a fairly pretty looking office building. But if there's other improvements that we can make, we're certainly open to those suggestions.
So what I see here on the screen shows that meandering sidewalk and river area is still going to be part of the landscaping to the north of your property boundary. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I'm getting a nod.
Yes. Here's a photo slightly more. Did highlight.
Do you want to speak?
I'll sit there.
Casey Wetmell with Yerbia Architect.
Okay, is this photo that you just handed us got anything different than what's already there? Or is that just showing what's already there, those trees? Are you adding to it?
There is some sidewalk improvement that was part of the agreement.
Oh, okay, I see that.
Widening that and cleaning it up.
So it actually connects instead of dead ending at nothing?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So there's a little bit of improvement there, and then general site, we are trying to make it a nice area. And then I'm not sure if in this slide deck at all, there's any photos of the building, but what was previously mentioned is we believe we're creating a nice looking building, not just a ugly box that is not good to look at. So
Thank you. Okay, follow-up question on what you said about the humming.
Yes.
Are we not going to hear anything because it's going to be so well insulated on the inside, or how is it that nobody will be bothered by that?
So most of the time when we talk about sound, the sound is actually from the energy generation equipment. As we're connecting to the Provo power system, like you can hear a pop and a crackle. We all have stood underneath the large scale power lines. You hear that pop and the crackle. But in this current proposal, that's the only energy generation or the energy that this facility will be utilizing. Less in the case of an emergency, there's emergency generators, which cycle on a very limited basis. They run for 30 minutes to make sure they still are operating and functioning. But inside of this facility, you're going to have computers and servers that largely make up this. Like I've never really contemplated that my computer, and granted hundreds of servers versus my computer underneath my desk, doesn't really make a bunch of noise. It's not a large noise emitter. But our obligation would be to never exceed that 60 decibels at the property boundary. So if we do need to do sound attenuation to make sure that that's possible or plausible, we will do that. That's part of what our obligation will be.
Okay, I have two more questions. This closed loop system that you keep talking about is not what people have heard on the news. So we have a lot of people that are worried about the water consumption that comes with cooling. So, can you give examples of how it works, or maybe a project that we might be familiar with that would help us to understand and be able to trust the data that you're giving us?
Sure. Well, two things. So first and foremost is what we've submitted to Provo is we've given the range of what we believe is the amount of total water that we'll consume. If we violate that, we are out of compliance. So we do have bookends. I don't think anyone would be mad at us if we miss on the low end. If we go over, then we've got problems. So what technology is evolving to is what's called liquid to chip cooling. We're talking about the most direct path to cool the parts of the components that get the hottest. So while the exact technology has not been selected that will go inside of this server, it will be a closed loop system that you charge. So think of like a radiator that you fill once with water or oil, and then it is virtually sealed minus whatever might evaporate as it goes through the system over and over and over and over and over. Not evaporate, but that might lose. I don't think there's any system that's 100% completely perfect, but you'd have 99.9% efficiency. So the only additional water that you will add into that is that makeup, if there is any defect in that closed loop cooling system. But one of the things that the technology has evolved to, we used to think, well, this has to be like refrigerator chilled water. It's 33-degree water to cool the chip. They're now finding, because technology is catching up, we're finding all these problems that other places have, and technology is catching up. You can now effectuate the same cooling with temperatures that are now like 80-degree water. So it's not this extra ultra chilled water. You are able to use almost ambient temperature water or warmer than ambient temperature water to cool it. And so I'll give you an example, and I don't speak for them, and I'm not the expert. But if you remember some of the largest hyperscale facilities out in Eagle Mountain, early on, the media reported that they asked for thousands of acre feet of water out of Utah Lake and other things to go cool. Because when they started, they were starting using swamp cooling, basically as a way to reduce their energy consumption. They realized pretty quickly that that system was not going to be sustainable long term. So most of them have converted their systems as technology has evolved. They are now starting to adopt and implement closed loop cooling as well. So we started in Utah doing evaporative cooling for data centers. Now there's no one that I'm aware of, and I'm aware of 11 or 12 other projects that are happening across the state from Brigham City to Cedar City. I'm not aware of any that is not utilizing a closed loop cooling system because we just frankly don't have the water to support it.
How do you cool the water when it gets hotter in the system? Because it may be at 80, but it's going to heat up as it cools down in the hot computer. So how do you recirculate it so that it's not hot when you recirculate it?
I don't think either one of us are qualified to answer that really technical question, but Casey's more like.
I can give a brief, but just to go back to your previous question, just to make it pretty clear to everybody. So there's the initial top off of the system, but the yearly water use for the most part is for flushing toilets, drinking water, and whatever culinary use you would have in a standard building. And I'm not exactly sure of the square footage of this building, but I would imagine it's probably less than what this building currently uses on your water demand. So hopefully that helps clarify how much water is actually being used other than the initial top off, which usually happens from a third party group because you need super clean water. And then for the cooling of the water, it works very similar. So it's what we call a dry cooler system. So the water, it's kind of like your air conditioner at your house. The water goes to the servers, picks up the heat, gets in the water, then goes to a bunch of really thin fan coils, and the air just goes over it, takes the heat off of that, and then it goes back in at the cool enough temperature for it to be used in the.
Okay, thank you. We've had something like this presented to us before, but I think because it feels like there continues to be the misunderstanding of it being the giant beast that it was in the past. And I appreciate you explaining that.
And if it's of any clarity, so you understand on the East Coast, so Virginia, North Carolina was kind of the home of the data center. That's where it started. All of them have more water than they know what to do with. That's why you have all the reclaimed ponds all over the facilities. You can absolutely do this by using water cooled systems. And that's what they do typically on the East Coast where water is not the issue. They do them along rivers and places where they have the ability to use and exchange that water or evaporate the water. But we're not the East Coast and we don't have that water. So we have to be more creative.
Alyssa?
Can I just have you finish the rest of that? So the water gets cooled and the heat goes where? How do you manage the heat that's produced from that?
So once again, the water probably comes in at like 80 to 90 degrees, and then we take like 5 to 10 degrees off of that, and it just goes into the atmosphere and then rises up, which is actually beneficial because it helps move any of the particles and stuff out.
So is there any environmental impact to that?
No more than normal, typical building use. It's pretty, like, in the end, the way this building is done is it'll be pretty similar to an office building, and it'll have similar impacts to the environment, to the heat that it's creating as a standard office building.
Okay. And it's not a geothermal system. You're
It's
not
not
using ambient ground temperature to cool it. Is there a reason why not?
It takes a lot of space
To do that.
Yeah.
Got it.
Any other questions, John?
Yeah, so from your point of view, as you're selling it to the city, why should the city, what benefits come to the city for us approving this data center?
Well, first of all, and we could get into property tax and other things there. Obviously, the city gets a component, the portion out of what the county tax is. Provo City gets that. So this will be a large tax generator as well. One of the things that we're working on really carefully right now, because of the service that this will provide, are the opportunities that we can have in a really kind of unique and developing tech market within Utah County. We obviously have two great universities here in this valley. There's a great opportunity for us so that we can provide employment opportunities and also provide a service. When we talk about AI computing as a service, it's a business model that's evolving. Not everyone needs a gigawatt data center unless you're Google and Microsoft and Amazon and these other places. But for certain companies, especially those that require confidentiality or specific uses, it needs to be relatively close to some of those end users. We talk a lot about hospitals. Hospitals are huge users of AI. I work with some great universities and some medical researching and others. Having this facility here is unique because, and not only this, we also have a university that's, we have no commercial relationship with any of these universities at this point, but they want to know where their AI compute is coming from and know that they have dedicated service. There's a really fascinating opportunity that could evolve from having this facility here, working with the universities in this valley. So I think there's a lot of benefits besides what we believe is a really great addition to this property. We think its location is fantastic. We're aware of the other proposals to put it out by the airport. This is a pretty industrial area. If we can help the wastewater system and get rid of their silver water, let's do it. Jobs, tax base. I mean, I think it's a pretty cool opportunity. That's my perspective. But
So follow up on the location. This is very prime real estate for the city of Provo. We stopped making too much land. We haven't produced much land lately. And so using it for this service instead of some other service is a big concern for the city. So as you look at other locations that may not be so prime, have you looked at any of those or any other options for you there? Or?
So we only
this is beneficial because of the water and it's close to the power infrastructure, so it wouldn't be as expensive for you to build. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and that's certainly part of the factoring too. So B+F, Timpanogos Tech owns this property. They own the entirety of the Novell campus. This was not something they acquired to build a data center on. This is a fantastic use of that property that they've already owned. This was not an acquisition to come propose this. So it's a redevelopment of existingly owned property.
But my question was, okay, so in terms of looking at other locations out by the airport, say, or some other places, you looked at those, they're not suitable for you?
No. We didn't look at there. We know that there were original proposals to site data centers there as well. I think the city probably has other plans, as I've understood it, for some of that property that would not be beneficial. But we think we happen to own a piece of property that is, a great use.
Okay, Matthew?
Yeah, a few minutes ago, you made a comment that I just want to clarify. You said something about you could add a rack and grow the AI. So help us understand what portion of this building will be used up front and what's the rest of it inside used for at this time?
Yeah, so if you look on the interior of this structure, I mean, it makes no sense to fill the entire facility with very expensive graphic processing units and other things to compute AI until you have the power that's sufficient to do that. So think of this as like, this is the footprint that you'd like to grow into. And so it's being designed and scaled so that you could start somewhere and then grow the facility as power becomes available. 5 megawatts, if we filled every nook and cranny of that property, 5 megawatts doesn't cover that. But we do believe in our conversations with Provo Power, there is a reasonable pathway to grow the amount of power that we could buy from Provo City. And then we could ultimately utilize the entire structure.
And that's great. I understand. But in the meantime, what's the rest of the structure being used for?
Yeah, so there's a variety of things that we can do. A lot of those plans are still being developed because there may be a transitional, but the idea is that it will ultimately entirely be used for a data center. and I don't want to speak because I feel like I might be out of turn here. There's probably the ability to build this building in phases or certain things to actually build out. But I can't speak to that because we don't know yet.
Okay. I guess, just so you know, part of the reason I'm bringing that up, if we're going to go down to 72 parking spaces, we need to know what's in the rest of the building.
Yeah. Yeah. And as of today, we're not contemplating anything other than a data center. Like that, like we don't have a plan to put, that I'm aware of, to put any tenants in there. And the reason for the parking obviously is a data center doesn't have massive amount of employees like an office space does. So if there's a need that arises, as staff mentioned, we'd have to come in and we'd have to tell you why we would need some type of reduction.
And then just to kind of address the parking, as mentioned before, the owner does own the whole Novell campus. And so there would be a way to put in, getting the word, but a lease for the parking across the street. And as you saw in some of those other photos, there's a lot of extra parking, and per the parking thing, I do know it's Provo's, their whole goal is to limit the parking. And that's one of their things, is they want to use shared parking across the thing. And on that same note, in that parking agreement, there's also offering that up, their parking space to other businesses to create agreements to use some of their available parking.
Alyssa?
Okay, you said this would be a large tax generator for the city of Provo. Can you give us some comparisons? Just like what?
Sure. I don't know Provo's, how much of Utah County tax belongs to Provo City. But I can talk about it. So as far as the structure, estimates are coming in still, and I don't know if there any of those we can share, but we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars to build this structure, this building, the way, kind of the intricacies that go into this building. And then in addition to that, all of the GPUs, all of the servers would be taxable as a business personal property that we all, I know every business owner loves when they get that and they say, tell us how many chairs and office, computers you have. This will be a really interesting one because all of that will also be taxable. The components inside the building will be a much higher value than the building. If that's, they're much more expensive for a GPU in comparison to the real estate. So a lot.
Okay, Joel?
So I've spoken with some of the folks that run the Eagle Mountain facility. And so I have a couple of questions about this proposal. For one thing, they talked about how within 6 months of buying these chips, they're already massively depreciated, almost to the point of not being worth the rack they're sitting on. So that doesn't strike me as a huge property tax boon. I'm also hearing about like job creation, but an office space of this size, if it was an office, would be 250 to 600 employees. We're talking 20 to 30. Maybe a little more, but probably not. So what does this bring to Provo? Why Provo? There's a 4 million square foot facility in Eagle Mountain. Why do we need 1% of that here? And why this location in prime business park space?
Two questions, and I'll answer them in the order you asked them. And thank you for both of them. So the first question on the GPUs, they do have a shorter life on the depreciation cycle, but the chips themselves also have a relatively short life. So and this is a conversation that I've had with lots of counties and other people saying, tell us about the property tax. What does it look like? If you take traditional equipment like business personal property, it's on this declining cycle, and usually you wear out that cycle. So you get down all the way down to zero. So you have a forklift that after 10 years is taxed at $0. The difference with this GPU is they're similar to what you do with your personal computer at home. I don't know if you're like me. I keep a computer for about 4 to 5 years, and then it's so slow and so stupid compared to the one I can buy at Costco for $600. I buy a new one. What happens with these GPUs is the rate at which technology is evolving, they will be inside of this facility for a relatively short period, between some say 2 to 4 years, some say 3 to 5. And so from a property tax standpoint for that equipment, it does something like this, and it dips and it recycles and it dips and recycles versus traditional business personal property, which does this and it crushes down to zero. This will never crush down to zero. For the Eagle Mountain facility, so obviously Meta has a facility in Eagle Mountain. QTS is building one there. Meta had one and then Meta decided not to, or excuse me, Google had one and then Google ended up not moving forward because of some power issues that they had. The difference with this is what that process does in Eagle Mountain. That's designed as a hyperscale facility and it's used entirely by the people that own it or run it. It's owned by Meta. They use it for all of their own purposes. What's being proposed here on a smaller scale, the anticipated user is someone that wants AI compute as a service. Very different. You may have 20 different customers that actually utilize this computational capacity here. And if we have our way, those will be businesses that are located in Utah County. That's the end goal, because the people in Utah County, unless they've got a Gmail account or a Yahoo account, my goodness, Facebook, are probably not using the capacity there. But people here could actually lease capacity inside of this building. And I'd love it nothing more than if it were people that needed the service here in Utah County.
But I guess still to my question, why does it need to be in this prime office business park location if we have other greenfields that could be utilized? We have maybe more industrial sites. I mean, yeah, I guess I'm not seeing this as a highest and best use for that location.
And I understand the concern. Ultimately, you have a property owner that believes the opposite and that it falls into the zone. With the PIC zone, this is where Provo City has said this is a great spot for an overlay for a data center. And so all the pieces add up to the opposite, and that's fine. We can have a difference of opinion, but that's what the property owner believes actually is the highest and best use of the property.
Because I want to say, hearing the details of the cooling, the generation, I think you guys have actually brought a much better data center than some of the stuff we're seeing across the state and across the country.
Thank you.
I do want to acknowledge that this seems to work out a lot of the kinks that people are concerned about.
Thank you.
But I don't think I'm fully sold on the location.
Sure. Understood.
So one more question on that point. Is there any other available real estate in Noville Park or that park area? And how much of it's occupied versus unoccupied there?
60%.
Hi, my name is Reid Smith and I represent the ownership group. Right now we sit at about 60% occupancy. Obviously, with what happened with COVID, it gutted office use. And so this is actually our effort to try to revitalize this area. As you look at the main campus map, the one that is immediately below the proposed site, so it sits kind of nestled in between the three buildings on each side, or two buildings on each side. That one is completely empty. That's an 80,000 square foot building. We've had it on the market for almost 3 years now. So the one that is at the curve, as the building starts pointing towards the south, that is an 80,000 square foot space. That one is also completely empty and has been in the market for a few years. So again, we're seeking to revitalize on this area and on our investment, and we have the capital means to do so. So we're not looking to get market loans and crossing our fingers and hoping that this works. We're very well-funded private family office and has the ability to do this.
Okay, thank you.
Lisa?
Regarding location, there's a lot of unused parking area in the campus. Would, instead of knocking down a building that's closer to other companies and uses, would you ever consider doing it maybe on the southeast corner by that little swampy area? That's just an empty parking lot in this picture.
The lot number 2, as it was discussed by Mr. Smallcomb, there would be the need for, or the potential need as the project scales up and reaches its full potential, we'd need to put a substation in there. And so we've dedicated that area as a consideration. The building that's immediately below to the south, we've also talked about renovating that building and putting in a smaller data facility. We've had our focus on this for almost 2 years now. And so getting to this point is a little bit of a milestone for us, but we're flexible, we're well-resourced, and we want it to be right for the community. What sits there now is a 48,000 square foot single story building. It's not an ideal use for this area. So, we're open to options.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any final questions? Okay, thank you so much for answering all those questions. Before we move to public comment, the mayor has asked Bill Pepperoni to read a letter from her office.
The planning commission has received this input, but the public hasn't had the opportunity to be aware of this. So that's why I'm reading this. As mayor, I feel it is my responsibility to articulate my policy position regarding data centers, which I would like you to consider. I believe policy and data demonstrate that additional data centers are not in the best interest of Provo's residents. Provo is a largely built out city with limited remaining land. As a result, land use decisions, particularly in key redevelopment areas, must prioritize long-term economic value, alignment with the city's strategic goals, and uses that strengthen the city's tax base and workforce. Data centers generate very few permanent jobs, provide limited wage growth, and contribute minimal ongoing economic activity beyond construction. And while some data centers, such as this one, will buy energy from Provo Power, their property values depreciate rapidly under federal guidelines, reducing long-term value to the city. The Provo City Council has prioritized a citywide economic development plan that will be completed by late spring. In evaluating strategies to invigorate neighborhoods and strengthen long-term fiscal sustainability, East Bay represents one of Provo's most significant opportunities for future economic redevelopment. The area has strong potential to support high-value, job-creating uses that increase area median income and contribute to long-term economic resilience. It would be premature to commit this centrally located site to a use that does not align with these objectives before the city's economic development planning work is complete. Because data centers are not place dependent and can be developed in many locations, the mayor's office believes East Bay should be reserved for uses that represent the highest and best use of this important redevelopment area. In my communication with you today, I feel it is important to emphasize the Planning Commission's role as a quasi-legislative body. While it is true that certain circumstances require the Planning Commission to function as an approving authority focused solely on legal compliance when reviewing projects, specific cases such as today's proposal, which would require a zone change, formally afford the commission more discretionary recommending power. Given the significant opportunity cost of prematurely approving this project, I urge you to exercise this discretionary power tonight.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll now open the meeting for public comment. First of all, are there any neighborhood or district chairs that are here tonight?
Sorry.
Oh.
Hi, Sandy Wilmoth, Provo City Planning Administrative Assistant. You all received a packet with public comments in it. Minutes before our meeting, we did get another public comment, so I just wanted to read that into the record before
Thank you. Yes, before you do, while you're pulling that up, I do want to mention we did receive letters from Paul Matthews, Daylene Rowley, Dory Kim, Lysandra Harker, Danny Pope, and Maury Anderson. So we have all read those letters previous to this meeting.
Okay, and the letter I am about to read is from Natalie King. It says, "Greetings, I am writing shortly ahead of your meeting to discuss possible plans for a data center here in Provo. I strongly urge you not to move forward with a new zoning to enable this to move forward. I know your commission members like to argue that their zoning decisions are neutral and are only made so far as to enable Provo City Council to make decisions. In this case, however, it is clear to me that recommending zoning changes to be put forward would simply set our city on a disastrous path. Data centers will either compromise residents' electricity rates, which are already climbing steadily year after year, or air quality. If the center decides to generate its own electricity, often done with air polluting diesel fuel. Furthermore, noise concerns and water usage, regardless of so-called closed loop systems, are, in my opinion, not at all worth the economic benefits. I don't think only 20 new jobs in the long run post-construction are at all worth the potential impacts. Data centers will certainly have a place in our digital lives. However, our environment with inversion already a perennial concern and water needs, which we already have heavily exceeded, state clearly that Provo is not the place for these centers. Due to these concerns, I ask that you not allow these plans to move forward another inch. Please vote no on recommending these changes to the City Council and save us all the headache. Yours respectfully, Natalie King, Provo resident.
Okay, thank you. So with that, are there any neighborhood or district chairs here present to speak on this item? Okay, you may come forward at this time. And I believe you will have 3 minutes to comment. 2. Okay, 2 minutes.
Yeah,
Got it.
I'm not the
Different.
I'm not the East Bay chair. My name is Angie Carter and I am chair of the East Neighborhood District. And I want to read a statement and I want to ask some questions. I think I'll ask my questions first and then read a statement. Many of my questions about water have been answered, but there's other questions I have as well. We talked a little bit about heat and the heat that's going to be generated. And I'm wondering if that waste heat can be sold or donated. So it's not just evaporating into the air. I don't believe that that is a neutral use of that. Second, I'm concerned about the proximity of the school to this location. People haven't really talked much about the school. What I've read on the plan is that there's a 200-foot buffer. That is less than a football field distance. Even they're talking about only using the natural gas generators for backup. I have one at my home. It is extremely loud. And for 30 minutes, you really can't hear anything inside the home. So anything that is nearby, even 200 feet, would be too loud for something to happen at a school. As I look at the power issues, the water issues, the heat issues, I can't help but think that Provo is giving up a lot for a little. The data center will only provide about 30 jobs. They're taking a lot of water and power to produce just 30 jobs. I'd like to see the Provo City Council articulate how this data center benefits Provo residents and how Provo residents will be protected from the historic documented harm that data centers around the country are producing in terms of pollution and increased water and power rates. Our communities do need data centers, but this particular property is right next to hotel and school. We can make much better use of this property. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Catherine Hall. I'm Vice Chair of Provo East District. I had a lot of residents speak with myself after this was brought up at our East District meeting on February 4th. I'm here to voice their concerns. Many you've already heard before, but I'm going to try and get through them as quickly as possible. Data centers provide low permanent employment. 2025 studies indicate that data centers provide minimal, if any, long-term local employment, generally creating fewer than 50, usually between 5 and 30 jobs. Won't finish that. If receiving subsidies, which most data centers do receive in order to build, they generally receive 1 million in state or local subsidies for every job created. That's what it costs. 2025 University of Michigan study found that data centers do not bring high-paying tech jobs to local communities, and that investment to create permanent jobs is roughly 100 times higher than in any other industry. Infrastructure costs, a lot of that's been addressed tonight. I just want to talk about one thing just for context. Facebook is 250 megawatt hours. BYU is 25. The one in East Bay by the golf course is 10. This would be the largest one in Provo at 50. 2 megawatt hours of power is the equivalent of 2,000 homes. So if we were 5, that'd be the equivalent of 5,000 homes. If they moved up to 50, that'd be, well, you can do the math, right? So quality of life, I just want to talk about air pollution. They have to operate 24/7. So they do have those generators, which produce sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, carbon dioxide, and particular matter, which can create long-term health concerns for residents, including asthma and other health issues.
Thank you.
So-
Any other chairs here? Okay, we'll open it to the general public at this time. Each of you can make one comment and you'll have 2 minutes to do so. As you've seen, once your time is up, the bell will ding and your microphone will be muted.
Hi, my name's Sharon Memmott, and I'm just starting to learn all these things as I've read only part of the report. Thanks for your time. I do also have a question about the schools, and I wondered if the 200 feet mentioned in the report is a standard for most schools relative to businesses, or is that distance based on noise, pollution, traffic? What is it based on? Should it be greater in this case? I'm concerned about the backup generator. It sounds like they're going to actually run every 30 minutes. Maybe I misunderstood. I do love the idea of the silver water. If there's a way to make use of that, hooray. That I think would go a long way to reducing the stress of neighbors, city residents on the impact of our water use. And as I talk to other neighbors of mine, friends of mine, I realize there are lots of data centers around the city that we don't think about all the time. Novell would be a good example when they were there. Other computer companies, tech companies that we have all over the city. So my question would be in part, what is the minimum or smallest? When does it get noticed or have to be approved as a zone, a condition of a zone for any business? So would it be worth them doing something smaller? Would that be of any use to them at all? And could they go forward without this permission if they did? Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Joseph Gill. I am a network and cloud engineering student. I'm currently a junior systems administrator. I'm a Provo resident. To truly justify the consumption of resources that this data center is said to consume, we must understand the technology. Unlike what we assume or what we see in science fiction movies, the current development of AI, or is actually large language models, is simply generates based on language patterns from existing human material. These models do not possess natural understanding or reasoning capability beyond their training. This technology can execute from our smartphones or workstations using existing technology and external storage, maybe from a storage data center, eliminating the need for a data center for analysis of the prompt. There's a push in the IT industry by major investors and power brokers to capture all compute to the cloud, aka data center, to monopolize and control our data. So based on this, why expand our precious land, energy, and water resources on something that is so ephemeral or temporal? If this was a quantum computing data center that actually has the hope of leading to real AI via AGI, artificial general intelligence, I would say it's worthy of investing for our area. Do not overestimate the promised value of this data center. They promise a lot, but often data center companies deliver very little, especially in the number of actual on-site employees after construction. Please ensure the guarantees are in place that the data center clients or owners shall, not maybe or will, that they shall pay the market rate for energy, water, and that existing customers will not have to subsidize the consumption in any way. Under no circumstances should the public subsidize private companies. And I'm also curious as to why the property owners are here, but not the data center owners.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Schultz, and I'm a Provo resident. I wanted to come to this to make sure that there is somebody, when I was reading all the Facebook, that is pro technology, right? I think they should be putting in the data centers. I think it's very important for government to not overregulate and not overzone. Let businesses make money. Let businesses be pro. It seems so many times in Provo, they start up a new business. It starts to make money. They have to go up to Lehigh because it isn't business friendly. We need to be a business friendly place. And all the stuff about how they're going to be generating power, they were very clear that it's very low water. It's very clean. They're using the grid power. You know, Provo Power is a good company and a good utility, and we want to let them have this revenue growth. And 5 megawatts does not seem like a very big thing. Everybody that's talking about 50 megawatts, it's going to take them a while to grow to 50 megawatts. And the power in the US is going to be growing along that way anyways. And I just want to make sure that we got some pro technology stuff. And putting data centers in, I think, is a good thing to say. Provo is a tech center and not afraid of tech as a whole. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jeff Chavez. I'm a Provo City resident. I came here really as an observer, had no intention on making a comment. I am also pro data center, pro technology. However, I have to say that I'm shocked at the presentation. When we look at technology that could come into a marketplace, there's a whole separate factor, and that is who's going to operate and manage and ensure that something is going to be successful. The fact that the team is not here, they did not know tax revenue. I felt they couldn't answer some basic questions. In addition to that, knowing some of the plans for like campuses like BYU. BYU is in no way in the market to use local data center capacity. And so my point is that as you look to approve a data center operator, separate from every other topic, I think you need to be sure that you have operators who are going to be actually successful in the plan they present. I don't see any chance that the operating team that I've witnessed today has the ability to operate a data center in a way that will produce the implied plan.
Thank you.
Hey, my name's Fern McKenzie. I am a Provo resident, longtime Provo resident. I love this city. I love that Provo is a place where we put people first. This proposal that I've seen, from everything I've seen, this is about putting tech companies and putting technology ahead of people. I think that an office building of that size could employ, like you said earlier, like 250 to 650 people. And I think having those people come into East Bay every day, shopping at the local businesses, paying tax, also just like stimulating the local economy and being a presence here would be a much greater boon to anything in East Bay than an empty data center that's just going to run all the time and eat up the power. I also think that Provo has a really incredible thing going with our municipal power, with Provo Power. Not a lot of places, especially not in Utah, have that benefit. And as somebody who's lived in Provo, paid taxes in Provo for a decade now, I feel like my investment into Provo Power as a citizen of this town would then go on to subsidize this large tech company. And I'm not really for that. One last thing that I wanted to bring up as a major concern of mine is they said that they're going to be swapping out these server racks every 2 to 5 years. What about all that technological waste? This isn't basic waste that's easy to recycle. This is complex computer parts that could end up in landfills near us and poison us in the future. And I'm not here for that. I just really hope that the commission will take into consideration Provo's goal of putting people first. Provo's motto is welcome home. I want this to stay my home and not be the home of tech companies over the residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Paul Matthews. I'm a resident of Provo, Utah here. I think, you know, all the talk about jobs and everything like that, I think are very overblown. I mean, I've worked in the tech industry my entire career. I've worked in data centers. The 20 to 30 jobs seems very excessive. I've worked in data centers and usually you have 1 or 2 people there. There's not a lot to do. Just replacing components that don't break very often. That's really it. As far as the power, I'm worried about supply and demand, raising costs for us residents here in Provo. One of the other things that nobody seems to be talking about is, the laws of thermodynamics. The more power you use, the more heat you generate. As you're generating heat, you have to get that out somewhere, which means air conditioners. You need lots of air conditioners to be able to vent all that out, into the air. Just like anybody has an air conditioner around your house, they're noisy. They're going to be blowing air all the time, and that causes a lot of noise around. And like people say, there's a school right next to this. And furthermore, there's 2 hotels right across the street. Doesn't seem like a good combo to me. And I don't think, as a person who lives in the tech industry, the argument of, having local tech or local infrastructure latency, it really doesn't matter. Like if you put a data center across the United States, you add tens of milliseconds of latency. And pretty much the only case where latency matters might be high frequency traders. Pretty much everybody else doesn't matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on these items tonight? Please come forward.
Hi, my name is William Nilsson. I would just like to say that the stock market around the AI technology has been stuttering fairly recently. And so I don't think that this technology coming to Provo is really that economically viable for the next couple of years. And I don't think it would be a great investment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments for these items tonight? Okay, not seeing any, we will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion. What are we thinking? Matthew?
Can I ask another question of the
Yes, please.
Maybe is it Stephen? Can I ask you a couple of questions? Are you able to speak to this concept? I'll just say generally pollution, but we got heat pollution and certain off gassing or whatever that is. Can you speak to any of that on how you contain or manage that?
I'm glad you asked me up so I could turn to Casey. I'll let the more engineering and architecture planner to speak to that.
Okay. Don't go too far. I've got another question for you.
I'll be right here.
So in general, like I kind of mentioned before, if you put an office building and the cars associated with this would have a similar pollution effect of an office building of that size and the related travel in that area.
Okay, that doesn't really, like, the servers can put off a lot of heat. You're saying that that's the same heat that a car in the parking lot? I'm not quite, I'm sure, following.
So in general, if you took the cumulative pollution and the impact that it would have of an office building of a similar size and the cars and the traffic that go to that, you would have a similar effect on the environment.
Okay, and how about the disposition of the old machines?
So most of that is a big concern, and most of the technology there's companies out there, most of it that it gets completely, they buy it and collect it and they recycle it and then reuse it in their parts. So there's a lot of precious materials in there that they're reharvesting and reusing. So most of the stuff does not end up in landfills, and there's often strict regulations about them not going to landfills. They can't just put that waste out there, but it goes to specific recycling companies.
Okay, thank you. And then the follow-up or separate question probably for Stephen, maybe for the owner. So this concept of instead of a 250 to 650 employee office space, but there are lots of vacant office spaces. So I don't know that that's a viable answer or discussion other than to say, so how does this help jumpstart other things within the campus, right? Because I think that's part of the model here is that this is a component of enlivening vacant spaces. Can you help us understand how that might look or what that would work out to be?
Yeah, it's a great question. As Rain mentioned, we have the other facility there that's virtually vacant for office. If there was a demand for office, it would be filled for office. If we were to take this proposal, instead of building a data center, you built an office, it might be a newer office. But we already have office inventory that's sitting on the market, that's sitting there. So the idea is that if you can revitalize it with something where there is critical demand for data center capacity. We believe, again, that this location, I mean, next to the wastewater treatment facility, this is not near residents. This is a commercial area. That's why this is one of those zones that's approved for data centers. Having a new tech availability, a new tech offering that's not in this facility, I don't know that it will immediately and dramatically impact other uses of adjoining properties, but it will be something that the market is clearly demanding today. And it will have new energy because today there's not much energy at all in this particular area of this campus. Having something that is high demand, that is new, that we could show to the residents or to other commercial interests that, hey, there is a data center, Provo City would like to have one. We have specific users for that. A lot of that we can't share. We have lots of ongoing commercial discussions with potential users. We're under non-disclosure agreements. I promise you the demand for the use is there and they would like to be in this facility, but we can't tell them until Planning Commission and the City Council decide whether we have a future here for that use. But there is absolute demand for this site. And we believe that it's something that can grow as Provo Power grows. And all of a sudden we have more tech partners that want to be in this facility. And this area can regain its prominence as a tech center. I mean, that's why the name of the entity is B+F Timpanogos Tech. We're trying to revitalize this area as technology. We think something like this can jumpstart that.
Yeah, Melissa.
Just going along with that, can you explain why having the data center here versus, like we just heard, doesn't matter, it can be across the country, why that is beneficial to technology companies? Why do they want to be near the data center?
So for a variety, and latency is an issue, and I won't profess to be smarter than the individual that shared that information. Latency is a factor. I personally have had meetings with 5 of the big 6 that we talk about in the data center. The first question they ask is, do you have power? Number 2 is there fiber, and what is the latency between different markets? Those are some of the first 3 questions they ask. What are your latency between Los Angeles, New York, Denver, other major markets, Seattle? And correct, in some applications, latency doesn't matter. If I use ChatGPT and it takes me, and it has that, for all of those of you who've used ChatGPT, it says thinking longer for a better answer. The difference to me as an average user to wait 25 seconds versus 35 seconds doesn't matter a whole lot. But there are users and other people that are in the AI space where milliseconds matter, especially as an example. And I won't profess that this is going to be a health only centered facility, but when you have a surgeon that's relying upon AI, and milliseconds do matter, especially when we get more into robotics and other things. But absolutely 100% agree. For the normal user, a 45-second response versus a 30-second response probably doesn't matter. But being closer to your user is, I'm not aware of anyone that would tell you that that is a negative from being closer from an AI campus to the end user.
While you're up here, a couple other questions that came up during the comments. Just to be clear, I think you stated this before, but a concern was raised about subsidies coming in. Are there any subsidies that you guys are receiving?
We have not requested anything from the city.
Okay. And then noise with
nor the state.
Noise, especially with the school nearby. Now, the gas generators do check themselves every so often, et cetera, but that's part of that noise ordinance limit, right? So even when they're on, it would be 60 decibels or 65 decibels at the boundary.
And it's not every 30 minutes.
No, it is not every 30 minutes. So they run, depending again on the exact model, I can't speak for every manufacturer of the emergency generators. They go through a cyclical, check the system bi-weekly, bi-monthly, each change, every spec changes, but it's a very short duration. And obviously you would try to do that in a moment in time to the extent you can schedule those to figure out when is the absolute best moment for them to run 30 minutes over once in a every 2-week or monthly cycle.
Yeah, other than that, is there any source of local air pollution that would be coming off this?
Not that we're aware of. We submitted a letter to the city on the potential emissions, talked about the amount of, which I believe you all have in your packet, the number of emergency generators. As Casey mentioned, this is going to look and feel and operate largely like any other commercial office space of the same nature. There's nothing overly special other than the way that you cool it and the technology that goes into keeping it cool.
Okay, John?
Another follow-up, one of the questions that came up was about the heat load, that if you're using, 30 megawatts heat capacity of power, thermodynamics, you have a lot of heat coming in. Do you have any feel for what your chiller load is? What kind of heat you're going to be dissipating there?
Yes, so we submitted that. The number of chillers is in the packet.
Okay.
I know that was something that we submitted within our.
I don't remember seeing that in the
environmental
information
letter.
we had. Okay.
And again, the ultimate design is clearly still pending on all of those factors. We'll rely upon our professionals on the truly engineering, the HVAC engineering technicians to itemize those to make sure that it's dialed in as accurately as possible. We don't want to overchill a facility. There's no point to doing that. We'll want to make sure that that is dialed in based on the ultimate final design of the facility.
Okay.
Commissioners, if you're scanning your packet to find the number of chillers, it's 3 to 6 in their environmental reporting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions while we have him back up here? Okay, thank you so much.
We'll sit closer to the front if there's more.
Okay, thanks. Okay, yeah, actually, I would like to invite David Day up. I have a couple questions for you.
Yeah, I'm David Day with Public Works.
Great. Can you just tell me more about silver water and what that is and where it goes now? What happens to it?
So the proposal, as it's been explained to us, is that they would use a maximum of about 12,000 gallons, which is something we're very comfortable with. I'm not sure how they process it internally.
But what is silver water at all? For those of us that, know gray water, black water, but that's about it.
And in what time period is that 12,000?
Yeah.
What's that?
What time period is that water used, like per day? Is that what you're saying?
We don't know that in their process. That's just a number they gave us. So, and I'm not sure what they refer to as silver water, but I suppose it's once they cycle the water through several times through their system, normally they discharge it and replenish it with a cleaner water as the hard water deposits build up. You've got to flush that out. So, but they would know that better than me. Some of the problems we've had in the country with other systems is they cycle the water through so much that they're effluenting a sludge into the sewer system, and we do not want that. That has caused a lot of problems around the nation. So as long as it's similar type of discharge as a home or a business, we're perfectly comfortable with that.
Okay. Yeah, I think we can. Do you have any other questions for David while he's here? Yep.
Okay, I have a few more for you. Can you discuss the distance to the school question? Is that the typical distance? Is that extra because of what's going in the building? Is there any reason to worry about that?
Yeah, that's currently in our code, and the way I understand it is measured to the property line of the campus. So I think the school's actually on this kind of the southwest side. If you measured from the school to this, it would be well beyond that limit. But if you measure from 1600 south to their campus, it's only about 80 feet across the road. So it's how it's written in the code. I think it's in violation.
So you're worried about it or you're not worried about it?
I'm not, because I think the school is way down on the other end.
Okay. And it was stated that this would be one of the largest data centers in Provo. I'd just like to clarify that that's not the case, correct? BYU's is.
This would be, from what I know, this would be the largest. We have actually, well, there's two of them in East Bay already. Can't quite see them on this map, but there's one down on Cooney Road. And then there's one just north of the Public Works building, on 350 East. Well, I don't know if that's interesting for people. So right there is one. And then if you go up north of Public Works up 350 East, keep going a little bit more north. Right there on the corner to the right, just a little, there's one right there.
In the scheme of things,
Those
though,
are two
is it,
of them that I'm familiar with.
is it still considered small in your estimation?
Yeah, the one down on Cooney Road is probably about 40,000 square feet. So, and I don't know what they do inside the building, but you can see if you go, you can take us back down to that one, you can kind of see all the coolers outside. Yeah, down on that corner right there. Zoom in on that top of that building, and then you can see the coolers on top of it. And then north of the building, you can see all of the equipment that cools all of the heat that's produced on the servers.
Okay, that was.
Before we move on, I was asked to weigh in on the distance from schools, where that requirement came from. It's very common in legislation from Virginia for data centers, ranging between 200 to 750, or sorry, 200 to 750 feet from a school or vulnerable population. We went on the lower end because those are all assuming they're these larger data centers, the mega centers.
And can you comment on the size too then? Because earlier you said BYU has one that would be bigger than this. I thought that's what you said earlier.
At the beginning,
That is
I think.
bigger than the 5 megawatts that they're starting with, and then they're looking to scale up. So as we're talking about the size of this data center relative to others, we have to take into account that this data center is going to be changing in size over time, but at no point will it be generating its own power without coming back for approval from the city. The power will be coming from UMPA. So
And
regardless of size, power generation on site will not be a factor.
And the city still considers it small because it's 0 to 50, not 50 and above. Is that correct? Okay, just wanted to be clear. Thank you.
In the code, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for David while we have him here? Matthew?
So can you just clarify your sludge comment? That's probably a technical term. But if we have other data centers, are they putting sludge into the sewer system?
We've heard horror stories from other cities as we've reached out and tried to understand what to expect. And the worst one is the centers that reuse the water so much that there's such a big buildup that when they discharge what's their waste product, it is similar to like a clay material as it kind of oozes down the sewer line and tends to stick to the walls of the sewer pipe.
So is there something that we might encourage them to proffer for us to make us comfortable that that won't happen?
Yeah, and we're planning to put all of that in a development agreement so that we're covered.
Okay.
Um,
But I don't think that's
maximum.
currently in our notes about being in the development agreement, but it's on your radar as being part and parcel.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
we don't want to be out there cleaning a line, and they'll be tying into a major trunk line. And believe me, we don't want to have problems with that line. It's about a 40-inch diameter sewer main.
So do we need to add that just whenever we get to voting, that needs to be part, or is that already?
I think we can add that recommendation as well. Okay, thank you, David.
Are we able to make some clarifications?
I'll go ahead and invite you forward to clarify.
So just a couple things there. We're not discharging any water other than sewer, drinking water. So just like any office building, that's what gets discharged. Silver water is a byproduct from the wastewater plant. It's coming from them, and it's after they've treated it to a certain point of cleanliness, but it's not potable yet, so you can't drink it. And so currently our system does not need that. We're a closed loop system. We wouldn't use that. They approached us saying, hey, we have all the silver water that we're just dumping in the streams. Is there a way we could sell it to you? And so that would be a possibility, once again, for the city to make
revenue.
So a question I had for you on that, I'd like to challenge you a little bit. Closed loop system, don't you have to flush it periodically every, I don't know, month?
No.
Semi-annually, annually?
So it's very rarely. Once again, it's probably maybe like 5 to 10 years, and has a glycol in there, so nothing can grow in there. And you usually hire a third party group that will also fill it and then take off the waste.
Okay, so you'll stipulate that there will, so it's a glycol or some sort of a coolant system, and you'll not be flushing it into the sewer system.
Correct. And a different group would take that. So that should never enter the local sewer system. And then with that silver water, the opportunity to buy that as another benefit, and as mentioned before, it'd be a great sustainable use to use that water, because currently it's just being put in the system. And so that would be used, you would use that instead of a closed loop system. So you would be using their water, and then that's where you'd be putting it over instead of a dry cooler, you have an evaporative cooler, like a swamp cooler, where you mist the water over it. And then that takes the heat, and it uses significantly less energy, which is why a lot of the other data centers prefer that, because it's cheaper and it's easier. So I just kind of wanted to clarify that a little bit.
So if you decided to use the silver water, then there would be two systems going simultaneously, one that would use the silver water and a different one that would be using the closed loop system.
Yeah, you'd probably have an additional heat exchanger where the closed loop system would then enter with the silver water system, and then you would use that.
Okay. Other thoughts we're having on the commission here?
I have been writing down a whole list of pros and cons. So since this is since this is our discussion time, I'm just going to share some of my thoughts. I agree that we want to preserve our natural resources. However, I don't feel like this is using them excessively. Like, I am not a fan of the number of car washes we have in Provo, and I feel like this is more environmentally friendly than that. I feel like what I've heard assures me that this shouldn't increase our rates or the residential infrastructure needs. I don't see it as taking power from us, from this residents and businesses in Provo. Because once again, there's so many UMPA requirements that are these safeguards to prevent against that. 4 million gallons of water still seems like a lot, but apparently it's comparable to other uses, other businesses. Those generators are only going to be used during outages. So as far as the noise from generators affecting the school and the hotel, they're going to have other woes if that happens. It's going to be because they also don't have air conditioners or lights or whatever. So I don't see that as a negative either. I really feel comfortable with the ordinance language that controls this. I feel like it's very, there's a lot of limits that have been set on this. I sort of feel like not being willing to make room for data centers is the same as saying we don't want cell phone towers in our neighborhoods. I know that there can be an argument made for the fact that most of us won't be using this proximal data center, but if it's a seed that brings tech into it because they want to use the data centers, I see that as the same thing as I use my cell phone and therefore require cell phone infrastructure. The employment argument doesn't sway me much since there are 3 entirely empty office buildings that could meet that need that people aren't using already. And I have learned that the old WordPerfect campus in Orem has a data center there that the tech companies there use. So that would make me believe that this would help bring tech companies and other users that could benefit from having the proximal data center. So mostly positives, a few things that I'm worried about, but I also feel like the ordinance and the restrictions that are embedded in it are really very protective. So I'm not super stressed. If I were to make one recommendation, if there was one thing that would keep me from saying, yes, this is it, I would put the location on the south side of the building. I think one thing people were worried about is the fact that it's in the middle of what is now not a very bustling place, but is the most likely spot to become a bustling place. So even though it has a sewage treatment facility on one side, it has the commercial uses on the north and west side. So that would be my one ask would be, if they own the whole property, we're not saying no to a project necessarily. We're saying you don't have to knock this building down, just build it on this empty pad over here and we'd be happy as can be. So that's my feeling about
that. Joel.
I guess I kind of see this almost like a utility. A substation is not going to have 100 employees, even if it has a large footprint, or a water treatment plant, right? Like, so I guess it's not maybe that fair to make a one-to-one comparison to office space. I do see that. And I can see an argument for this being like an anchor tenant, right? Saying, give us a Costco and we know everything else comes after. Give us a data center and we hope it will pull tech businesses to East Bay. I think, given the mayor's letter and this economic development plan that we're looking at, I would want to see this integrated into a plan for East Bay. I would want to see a little bit more upfront about what it is we're expecting to result from this. I think a lot of my initial hesitations about data centers, I think a lot of those are being addressed. I think the ordinance that we saw a couple months ago helped make this a much cleaner, more sustainable data center than maybe some of the behemoths we're seeing in other communities. And I don't want Provo to be caught flat-footed in a tech boom, and to see all of our jobs go to Lehigh or whoever is willing to put in data centers. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to have it in an office park campus. Maybe not right in your front entryway on the your most attractive curb. But I guess my biggest qualm would be I would want to see this in discussion with what were they calling it?
You're talking the economic development plan?
Yes, I would want to see a plan for that region where this data center is shown as integrated into a larger vision for revitalizing that region. I don't think, I'm not a hard no, but I would want to see why it makes more sense for this location.
I can just share a few thoughts here. This is a really interesting issue for me because in my work, I actually work with AI and computation quite a bit. I do a lot of bioinformatics analysis, large data sets. And I'll tell you, latency doesn't really matter as far as latency, but trying to get 50 terabytes of genomic data across the country is really tough. And having somewhere close really helps, because your transfer only goes as fast as the slowest connection between here and there. And that's a big benefit. I've actually made my own AI models. I've generated these. I've seen them work. I'm familiar with people who are using it for amazing things that will improve our healthcare. A study out of UCLA already showed that LLMs can diagnose disease better than doctors can. So that's going to be a valuable tool for every doctor to be able to more accurately diagnose diseases, especially the rare ones that they don't see that often. I've seen amazing things that it can do with image analysis for x-rays. I saw a student at BYU form a company, and he was proposing it yesterday at a competition that integrated medical records from multiple providers and put the patient back in control. I've seen diagnostics that use it, DNA sequencing. There's so many super beneficial uses, and I'm just seeing my own little world, right? Not even reaching into all the other potential uses for it. So I think, I don't think it's going away. Yes, the economy is going to kind of go up and down, but I think saying AI is going to go away and we don't need data centers is like saying in the dot-com boom of 2000 that the internet was going away. That's not what happened, right? It restructured. We found the good uses, we stopped some of the bad uses, and it moved forward. And I see that happening here. And I do see it as a draw for tech companies that are trying to build on these technologies, many of which are coming out of the universities here and need infrastructure to stay here instead of moving out of Provo to other places. And so having that can be a big draw. Like Joel said, instead of letting it go to the other cities who are willing to do this. Now, the other side of this is the externalities, right? What are the costs of these kinds of things? The longer I've been on Planning Commission, the more I see every development as kind of that pros and cons, right? The benefits and the externality costs. Nothing's a silver bullet that's all good and nothing's all bad kind of thing. So I kind of organized, as I was organizing my thoughts before this meeting, externalities into 4 areas, and I think we've hit most of them tonight. There's the degradation of lifestyle. These are things like noise that it produces, obstructions to views, traffic problems that a development can have, those kinds of things. And I think they've been addressed very well by the applicant and by the city. Which, side note here, I'm really grateful for all the effort that went into creating this ordinance, because I think when we hear these horror stories, and when I went and looked up some horror stories before the meeting, this ordinance that we passed a little while ago is protecting us from the vast majority of those problems. And I'm really grateful for all the efforts that went into that. There's the environmental externality impacts, right? Pollution, water. Pollution's an interesting one. There likely will be pollution with the energy generation, right? Because our grid is not completely green. But it won't be local in this area, right? So things like inversion, things like that are less of a concern. The water, I think the silver water or closed loop system, or a hybrid thereof, I think are excellent options. And especially the silver water is actually an argument for this location because it's conveniently located right across the street from the sewage plant. So we're not talking about a large infrastructure investment in order to service that. Think about infrastructure impacts. We've talked about electricity. I think that's been well handled. It could be a concern. That's a very, very legitimate concern with these things. And there are communities that have been harmed because they were not protected. But I read through all of the OMPA documents and our code and everything, and I think we're in a great place there. Roads is not really an issue with this kind of project, right? Traffic, those kinds of things. One of the benefits of having something that doesn't have a ton of people coming every day is that you don't impact your road infrastructure. And then economic impacts. Yeah, the jobs generated directly are few. I'll give that. And in fact, we could call it essentially zero, right? But as was commented, I went and looked up commercial real estate office space. We have a lot sitting around, and many of these around the city have been sitting vacant for 3, 4, 5 years. The industry has changed. There's a lot more remote work. There's things like that, and we just don't need the amount of office space we needed to before. And so we have to start looking for other uses. And even if theoretically an office could go here, I'm not seeing anything that convinces me that it will go here. It may just sit empty. And so in that case, you know, are we willing to risk that and say no to something that, as was stated, has immediate and real demand, right, and use? There's also, you know, ideas about subsidies from government. That's been well addressed, things like that. I'm glad to see that that's not being heavily used in this case. The tax base property value, I think, will likely go up. There will be a property tax benefit. The equipment inside is kind of an interesting one because of the short lives, but also depreciation, those kinds of things. So I'm kind of neutral on that one. But then again, I do think the economic impact of a halo effect for tech in Provo is a positive for this place. So in the end, I feel like this is a good example for me of something that brings some positives, and we've really done a good job of mitigating the costs in it for all of us. And so it's hard for me to say I'm absolutely going to say no to this because there are more positives than negatives in this particular case, especially with what I see in my work professional life as far as AI and what I see the potential for it to become in the future. Not everything's just making silly photos on ChatGPT or whatever, right? There's real uses out there that have significant benefits. So, John, did I see your hand?
Yes. So also, as I put together this, I appreciate the comments from from our neighbors and the letters that we received and things. I went through those very seriously, and I have kind of a high bar, I think, anyway. I don't know, to be able to hurdle to make sure that that the concerns of our citizens are being addressed, and that the issues that we have are proper. We want to have we love Provo. We want to have a wonderful Provo. We want it to get better and better continually. And as I listed all the concerns, pretty much the list that we've already gone through, just want to say a couple of things. I do have a lot of experience running facilities, setting up like this, facilities that you would think, if you just look at the generic questions and the issues that could be a problem for neighborhoods and for localities. And if you identify what the issues are and you address them properly and you run it well, it becomes a benefit to the area. And as I look through all the questions and things here, I'm agree with my fellow commissioners. I feel comfortable that done a good job to identify them, address them, and take care of them. The electrical rate, I'm actually very, very confident that will be a benefit to Provo to bring those in. I know in terms of the, anyway, the flat load is a wonderful thing. The additional rates coming into Provo will be a benefit in terms of cost for Provo. I don't see any potential for that hurting us in terms of our own rate. I'm not concerned about the noise or the water or the heat or the location to the school because of those kinds of issues that in other poor types of data centers might happen. Let's mention the quality of operation. It's always I don't know, what do you say? It's always a gamble. We don't know. We don't know who's going to come and how they're going to run it and take care of things. I don't know if I can use that in terms of where I'm at. Technology ahead of people, I agree. People need to be first and foremost. Certainly, people are important. And the concern project ahead of people, I think, is a very, very valid concern. As I look through this, I don't believe that's the case in this particular project. The technological waste, I agree with John on the stock market. I don't think that's companies will come and companies will go. That always happens. But the technology is here and will not be going away. In terms of demand for office space, I completely agree with that. Not concerned about the parking. There's plenty of parking on the campus in terms of usage for this area. The idea of this being an anchor tenant, I think, is a concept that hopefully is true. I don't have any idea if it is or not, but it seems like it's plausible. That's a plausible benefit. So I don't see any compelling reason to deny this case right now.
Any other comments, Joel?
I guess my inclination would actually be to continue it until the citywide economic development plan is finished and bring back evidence that it complies with that. This is such a big sort of initial decision, dipping our foot into the data center conversation. I would want to make sure it aligns with citywide goals before we go signing off.
Barbie?
Yeah.
I agree with that. And I agree with Joel and Lisa's other comments as well. I'm also satisfied on the points about environmental issues that are important to me as well. My issue is the overall planning and land use. Like it's really hard because these decisions last for such a long time before they can be redeveloped usually. And one thing about this area, as Lisa pointed out, that this is very much a place that has things around it that we could see redeveloping in really great ways. And my only comment would be just like she said, put it on the south side or put it as a buffer between the rest of this space, this group of parcels and the water treatment plant. It could actually be something that helps this area be eventually more valuable and productive. So yeah, that's my concern, is just like I just sometimes it's hard because we're not the landowners. But I always hope that landowners will also kind of cooperate with the community in the best way. And so I'm hoping that if we wait, which I agree with, to get some cooperation with the city, I would love to see that, to have a more cohesive plan instead of it being piecemeal.
Just a comment about that. I think the parking lot on the south side is an interesting option. Two concerns I have with it. One is the major road, Lakeview Parkway, is actually on that side, right? And so this is kind of around back in my mind. I've only taken that road when I was looking for a back way, not a main way. So for me, it actually feels more tucked away this way. Also, I think that parking lot is so open mainly because the large tower building is only partially occupied. And I worry that we're going to cut out parking that's needed if that ever fills out completely. But those are just some of my thoughts there. Lisa, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Mr. Pepperoni what you think the timeline would be on the economic development plan that the city council just asked for.
The Economic Development Department has thought that could be done pretty quickly. So when the mayor said sometime this spring, I think that's
So we're
accurate.
talking just a few months.
Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't feel as horrible. And then I just wanted to point out one more thing before Melissa talks. The road that's coming out of the sewage treatment facility, that tees, actually it goes across the street and goes at the inlet where the Novell campus is. I believe that's very close to where the silver water is released into the river. So it comes out on that side.
So can I ask Mr. Pepperoni, what would be the impact of delaying this as far as the city's concerned? Delaying it till the economic plan is developed for that area?
From the city's point of view, I don't think it makes much difference. The applicant has been waiting since the original rezoning, the new zoning ordinance was written. They had their application in right about the time that effort started. So they've been in line for almost a year now, 9 months or so, since last summer. Yeah. So it's not an inconvenience to the city, it may be to the applicant.
And if we were to go the other way around and actually approve this and use it as a springboard for the economic plan, is that reasonable, or is it better the other way around?
Well, the mayor certainly voiced her opinion that it would be better to do the plan first.
I think, I don't know, just to give a counter argument, I don't think this having a data center here hugely makes or breaks anything in an economic development plan. It's one spot. So I'm comfortable going forward. If the city council feels like they want to continue it because they're the ones working on the economic development plan, I would personally put it in their hands, and they can do that if they feel that it doesn't fit in some way and they need to look at it. Matthew?
First of all, I'm proud to be associated with all of you and city staff. I think this is a very thoughtful discussion, appropriate for the importance of this. I agree that the pollution comments, the electrical, the water, I think all of those things have been addressed really nicely. If the condition or the development agreement were to include something about the sewer water and the sludge problem in some way, and something about if they were to change uses, that the parking would actually be fixed in that, I'm a huge yes. Like, this is like, when we zoomed out, I'm like, why are we even talking about this? There's so many vacant parcels over there. There's so many vacant parking lots. There's so many vacant existing buildings. I think let's get going. Like, this is a chance to get jumpstart. It's still going to take a long time, right? Not, it's going to take a while to get this building done. I think waiting is just not useful for what it brings and what it can add. One other thought that I think is just interesting as I look at this plan, right? There's not a lot of parking. I love that. It's a good looking building. Now I don't see the elevation of the backside of the generators. I don't want to call it storage. But if that's pretty, then this did nothing but augment a dead-ish kind of space in a really nice way. It doesn't matter that no people are coming and going. This is a driver-centric area, and we made it better. I was planning on coming in on after reading the mayor's letter and saying, yeah, we totally should continue it. Now I'm like, I don't think we need to. It's on the backside of the campus. It's a good looking building. It'll add value. People are going to drive to it anyway. They've spoken to all of, I think, what are the neighbor comments, even if the neighbors don't quite understand that that's what happened yet. The ones who hear maybe did or didn't, but I'm in support. Like, I think this is a great addition to a community that clearly has a ton of, the urban term is moth-eaten area, and this will do nothing but help that. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that I'd hate for Provo to lose out. We've lost out in the past in some of these things, and this is one chance for us. I agree completely with Jonathan. I'm in the same space, and AI, we have to make room for it, and having it closer will be a benefit. We have trouble because of distance in my profession, and to have those housed closer is better for businesses. So I agree it will actually bring business. I think it's very short-sighted to think it's not creating any jobs. Therefore, it's not good use of that space. I think that's short-sighted. And I agree that I think they can make an economic plan, and it would actually be helpful, in my opinion, if it was known that this was something that could go there. But again, I like the concept of just let the city council decide.
I really liked Joel's analogy of a utility, like a substation or something. Yeah, it itself isn't generating jobs. Yeah, it's itself not,
a really
Class A
beautiful
office space,
substation.
but it's doing it. Yeah, really beautiful one, a really well-designed
Best
one.
looking substation I've seen.
But that idea, right, that yes, even though it's not directly creating a lot of jobs or filled all the time, it's facilitating others, right? It has that halo effect, which I think should not be underestimated, what that brings to a city.
I just want to restate that I appreciate what Joel said about waiting. And I feel like what Melissa said, if the city council would rather wait, then they have the prerogative to do that. But I think that anything they come up with, this could be a part of that. And I don't have a problem with not waiting. So as much as I love the idea of waiting for it to be part of an integrated plan for East Bay, wanting to find out why this location would be the best. If the city council wants to address that in their discussion, they can do that. But I feel comfortable with the recommendation that perhaps a different pad would also work, but I would be okay with it. It wouldn't be a no if they didn't change the location.
So I think one way forward is to do a straight vote on recommendation or not. Those who feel like it should be continued can vote no and state that as their reason for voting no. And then it will go into the record.
Or
and be
the
passed
motion
along
can be
city
to continue, and people can vote
And
accordingly
we can
as
vote
well.
on that as well. We can also do
Keep
two
this straw
motions,
poll.
right? If the continuation fails, then we can move forward with it.
Do we need to discuss the TDM request separately, or is that all part of the project plan approval?
That's part of the project plan.
Okay.
I mean, it seems like if we're talking 10 employees, 72 is vastly overparked. So.
And it gives
maybe
wiggle
you could
room
cut a
for
little
whatever
more.
comes next.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make it a done deal for something else if it ever needed to be replaced.
I just want to make one random comment. It is so random, but
Ooh, I
this
love
would be so cool to have like a rooftop garden educational center on top that could do your cooling for you, use up the heat and the water. I'm just saying,
That wasn't random. That was actually on topic.
I know, but it's kind of like a weird, hey, at last minute, here's an idea to make this have two uses, which honestly, like it does take up a lot of footprint, and that would make it so that there's like all these other benefits, the beautifying and everything. So just an idea.
Okay, are we ready for a motion?
Yep. Can I, Lisa, I assume you were taking notes. You're going to make the motion. You're a motioner.
I'm a motioner.
Are you going
I'm
to?
emotional.
Are you
That's
gonna,
what
are
you
you
meant to
going
say.
to capture and whatever we decide the motion is? I
Yes.
think
I
a
will-
couple of additions to the
I will
development agreement.
check with Mr. Wright to make sure that I have them because my staff report does not have the conditions of approval that you keep mentioning. So I have that there's a development agreement that has been proffered for no power generation on site, that the water be a recirculated system, or that they limit their water to the parameters that were established. And then we would add the prevention of a sludge discharge. Is there something else that should have been there that we haven't picked up on?
I was suggesting something about parking if they switch, just to make that super clear, but is that already obvious enough?
I think the TDM traps them in that because they are locked into it.
Yeah, so with item 1, the zone map amendment, that's where the development agreement would come into play. In that, so far, they've proffered to not generate power on site and to use that closed loop water system with that quantity of water utilized there.
Do we need to state that in our condition, like what that quantity was, or we just need to refer to the recirculated water?
We have that draft that legal's been working with the applicant on.
It's already in it's already in the draft DA.
So we just need to refer to it. Okay.
You could emphasize that that threshold that they've given, that is a maximum and not just an approximation of what they anticipate to use.
I like that.
Okay.
They would probably, since it's development agreement, need to agree to that. So you can invite them back up to make sure they're okay with that. And they also talked about that sludge question. I think they addressed that, but if they're willing to also put that in a development agreement, I think just getting them on the record for those things would be good for item 1.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and invite the applicant forward now. Anything giving you pause from that?
No, none of it does. The only clarification, just so we all understand, the parameters on water usage, that's about culinary, like just culinary grade water. I want to make sure that that's crystal clear. That's not if we could use silver water, that's
Outside of it.
based on what we would anticipate it would use as like an office building. And we're very comfortable with those parameters. And we anticipate that's going to be part of the development agreement. We've reviewed it. We work collectively with city council on it. We feel like it's either completely done or nearly done. Like I think they might have 1 or 2 items like minor, but we're great with where the draft is at.
Great, thank you.
Just to clarify, there's been no discussion with the city council on it. It's city staff.
City staff.
No,
attorney.
so sorry, legal counsel. Yeah,
Legal counsel.
I say city council. If I did, I'm so sorry, Bill. I meant
Yes.
legal counsel for Provo City.
Great, thank you for that clarification.
But he
Okay.
didn't proffer anything about the sewage sludge concept. Can we just clarify
Yeah,
that?
and clarify. So all of that with the glycol will be removed by third party. If you want to add that as a condition, that any of that recirculated will not be discharged into the sewer. No problem. That's the plan.
Great, thank you.
I would love for that to be in the development agreement.
Yeah, no problem. And it's not currently, I don't think anyone's contemplated that until this discussion today. So to your point, we're glad to have this opportunity to work through that. That's not something we're contemplating. We're happy to agree to that.
Great, thank you. Okay, Lisa, you ready?
Okay, I have been chosen. Okay, I would like to make a motion that we forward a positive recommendation to the municipal council for item 1. Stephen Styler requests a zone map amendment to add the data center overlay zone to property in the PIC zone to develop a data center located at 1507 South, 180 East, with the condition that a proffered development agreement include that they are not producing any power on site, that they will be using a recirculated system of culinary water within the given threshold, and that the glycol that we've been calling sludge will be removed by a third party. So it will not be discharged into the city system.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, let's go ahead and start voting. John?
Aye.
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 Aye. Nay.
Nay.
And I'll vote aye, and so it passes 5-2. Do we have a motion for item 2? I think item 2 is more straightforward, right?
I'll go for it.
Awesome. Thank you, Matthew.
And just to clarify, we're approving or denying, we're not recommending to city council on this one,
Correct.
right? Okay.
In that case, can I just give comment on
Yeah.
the nay? Yeah, just like I said, I'm not saying this is necessarily at odds with
That's the
a redevelopment
recommendation
of
too,
East
so-
Bay. I'm not saying that it is not in alignment, but I would just want to see that city plan first and ensure that we are moving forwards as partners and but they're not out of step.
Great. Would you like a formal motion to continue to be considered? Or do you want to just have a no vote with that note amended?
For item 2?
Yeah, for item 2.
Item 2, I don't have a problem with the project plan, but I think granting a rezone based on a project that I'm not yet confident recommending on the basis of that economic plan. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Just to clarify, if the project plan gets approved by our vote, but the zone change does not, then the project plan is effectively not approved either. So we're not locked in if the city council doesn't like our vote.
Okay. Matthew, you ready?
Just one clarification. So there are 3 conditions associated with the staff recommendation. Do I need to read all of those individually and completely? Yes. Okay. So I move to approve Reid Wintersteen request project item 2, Reid Wintersteen request project plan approval for a new 66,000 square foot data center in the planned industrial commercial zone located at 1507 South 180 East Bay neighborhood. With the following conditions. Number 1, updated plans are submitted, including site and end of project equipment mitigation plans and are approved by CRC. Number 2, a final plat is approved and recorded that combines the parcels into one parcel and adjusts the parcel where the charter school is located to not be within 200 feet of the data center property. And number 3, for the parking reduction to allow 72 parking stalls, a TDM is recorded.
Seconded.
Thank you. Any comments on the motion? Okay, let's go ahead and start voting.
Oh, I have a comment.
Oh,
I just wanted to point out that it's a 66,000 square foot footprint, not actually floor space,
yes.
since we clarified that earlier.
Okay. With that in mind, let's start our voting.
Aye.
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 And I'll vote aye, and so this item passes unanimously. Okay, with that, that is our last item of the evening. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.